Hey, everybody. Welcome back to the thebolusmaximus podcast. My name is Matthew Taro. I'm here with my co-host and co-founder, Mr. Brandon A. Denson.
Yo, what's up?
Brandon, I just found out I really can't clap very well.
It's
That's
all right.
uh, trying to clap us in, man. It's great to see you. Great to be back recording and excited to get into some conversations between the two of us. I think you've got a topic for us today. What is it?
I would say topic we're gonna jump into is switching up technology. Diabetes technology. Change up. I mean, I guess that fits as baseball season, right? So change up, change it up. Spring, change it up, you know?
So let me ask you. You've been using the same system for a while, or you had, excuse me, not to give anything away here, had been using the same system for a while, if I understand correctly. What was that?
That was a Medtronic insulin pump. So I would say for the last close to 2 decades, I was using a Medtronic pump, insulin pump for my
Absolutely.
insulin therapy as I would take breaks in between.
Okay. So you're actually a really great individual to ask some questions that I personally have for you. Although this is weird because my camera's over here and the microphone is right where your face is. So I feel like I'm talking to you, but I can't see you. Now I can see you. Hey.
Okay, bye.
So you've used a bunch of different products
Oh yeah.
companies have put out in the last couple decades, as you've mentioned, Medtronic being the heavyweight there. So you tried something previously though that you were also a fan of. So not what you're using right
Oh,
now and not Medtronic, but you mentioned changing it up, and I think not everybody understands that you should have. We're not. Where's the
you know.
we are not trained medical professionals. Disclaimer, disclaimer, disclaimer. Okay. Jeez. Sigh of relief. I can't imagine all the people coming in to listen to this going, oh, I can't wait to hear these doctors talk. Listen, we're smart individuals, but we're not medical professionals. And this is not.
We're not MDs.
I'm
but
an
we are subject matter experts.
Yeah. So basically, I worked at Tandem Diabetes Care. And before I got onto a tandem pump, I used an Omnipod system. And that's the system that you had used after Medtronic, similar to me. So I went from Medtronic to Omnipod.
Correct.
I was really excited about Tandem at that time. I think it was about 2016. And then I ultimately went to Omnipod, served a couple years in the tubeless army. And then I feel like I landed in a place. So your path was a little different, right? So influence, doctors, recommendations, the community. You've had a lot of people, a lot of news, a lot of research, a lot of at your fingertips. Let me ask you before we talk about it, do you feel like a lot of members of the Black community know as much as you do about insulin pumps?
Honestly, I'm gonna say no, man.
Respectfully.
Yeah, respectfully, and I don't think it's I don't think it's because like they don't care. I just think their thought process is like, how do I survive day to day? More so like, I think you have individuals like my friend Aisha that you met that we had on a podcast. Her aunt just got an insulin pump.
No kidding.
And she's been living with this for 14 years, so you I see like I think with elderly people, I understand, they don't want to use technology that change up, like, no, I'm good. I'll just stick to, needles and things like that. But it ended up being, she loves it. You know what I mean? Like, she's still battling with like some lows and things like that. But, that crossover from, MDI, multiple daily injections, to, an insulin pump, it is a difference. It takes getting used to, it takes the, understanding the functions of a pump and using it. So it could easily be frustrating for somebody that doesn't use technology, or, doesn't use technology really beyond the phone. You know what I mean? So, but I would say, like, far as I grew up on technology, whether it was video games or, computers, I've always wanted to try, quote unquote, the next best thing that came out, whether it was freaking Sega and Super Nintendo, or Nintendo and, from Atari to Nintendo and Sega, and then from Sega to like Game Gear, and then Dreamcast and PlayStation. You know what I mean? So like I look at these devices and these tools kind of like that. If somebody's saying like, oh,
I'm glad you brought all that up, bro. I'm gonna talk about something, and I think you just helped me.
I just think, like, I'm all for if what you do works and you don't want to change something. But I also look at it like, if you can make it a little bit better, and yeah, it may take some getting used to, is it worth it long term? And that's kind of what I look. If it helps you with tighter control, now don't get it twisted. It's some people that do MDI and it's like they're on a pump. You know what I mean? But it's,
the numbers are locked in.
Exactly. So
props to them. Yeah.
I'll always say this: my transition from being on shots in the very beginning, understanding when I was at the University of Michigan Hospital, and the nurse said, "Oh, well, we have a machine. You can get a machine that gives you insulin, and you just type in the carbs." I'm like, I want it. Like,
yeah.
But at that time, they said, we want you to live with this disease for a year, get used to it. It's not like that anymore. So that's another topic too, though. You know what I mean?
I just talked to Zuli today. Her in the grand scheme of things, it should be similar for everybody. You get diagnosed, they introduce you to technology, they say this is a positive thing, it can help you. Here are your options. If you don't want to do this, that's fine. They shouldn't smother you or anything. But I talked to Zuli today, and we had a great conversation. Shout out Zulika. And so I said that for like 5 or 6 years, my doctor, similar to her, like if you're in good control, they basically feel like, why do you need the pump? Like if you're not in good control, like you get that. And that's the opposite for me, was like I was in bad control, and my doctor was like, well, you can't get the pump because you're not in good control. And I was like, shouldn't that help me?
And it's funny you bring that up, because it's like that. I feel like, our buddies across the pond in the UK, that's kind of like the issue over there too, right? Like
exactly,
if they
brought that up.
Yeah, so it's kind of like, I look at it like this. If we have these tools that are supposed to help us manage our diabetes better, then I think everybody should have access to them. They should be able to get off of them and switch if that's something that they want to do, without having like being signed in like a lease. Because at the end of the day, I hear people that say that they wear Medtronic, they like it better than Tandem. I hear people that say that they wear Tandem, they like it better than Omnipod and Medtronic. So I think it all works differently on everybody's body, far as
it is crazy. In the way that you just said that, to cut you off, I'm so sorry. You just made it sound in a way for me a little bit different, where I might be having a conversation with somebody. But if my point that I was thinking about before was about privilege, like you and I grew up where the reason for change was different time to time. Sometimes we had to make changes. Sometimes we just changed things up.
Yeah.
And that's how my father was.
Yeah.
He was a hardworking man. That's how he was. He wanted to change things up. He just did it. I was like, all right. Especially with technology. And so what I was thinking is, as you and I grew up, we were totally customized to changing technology every like so often. TVs, phones. Look at phones.
Realistically, you got to think of the transitional period that we went through. We went from, and I'm gonna go like my parents had 8 track, so I knew what that was, but they also had vinyl, and then they
Hey,
had cassettes. You know what I mean? Then we
yeah.
had CDs and MP3s and then streams. So we got to see all of these waves and understand this is the same thing from the pagers to the two-way pagers to literally cell phones. You know what I mean? Like, so
Oh yeah.
that whole progression, going from all of these different stages. I mean, like,
Don't date
you went.
yourself there, my man. Don't. Brandon's
It's
like,
all good.
do you remember the pagers? It's like,
I mean, I'm just
little,
throwing
little-
it out there, you know?
It's funny you say that because that's what everybody thinks our insulin pumps are.
Pagers.
All
Yeah.
right, so let me get back to it. What pager are you wearing right now, bro?
Currently, right now, I have a Tandem T Slim with the IQ. Am I saying that right? I'm not a. I don't know how you say it.
So, if I understand correctly and could summarize for everybody listening, Brandon A. Denson had used Medtronic for about 10 years, tried the Riley Link loop system with the Omnipods.
Which was awesome, absolutely awesome.
Well, I didn't try that, but I did do the Omnipods. And then
Yeah.
now you're wearing the Tandem T Slim X2 with Control IQ technology.
Oh, X2. That's what I love.
That's all right.
X2.
It's all right. It's okay. I got you. It's all right. So I'm gonna summarize here from our conversations that it sounds like you feel futuristic.
I feel futuristic. Yeah.
Could
You
you?
want me to elaborate on that?
Yeah, all the way, all the way.
Okay, so you have an analog phone and you have a digital phone. To me, it's a big difference that I'm either like pressing buttons or like I'm sliding on the screen like I'm using a phone that I use. So to
Yeah,
me, that makes it feel futuristic already because I'm so programmed to like clicking a button, filling a button, going through a menu, click, 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 click. So for me, like that levels up the whole process for me because I'm familiar with using my phone, also familiar with using my pump, but it's different. And it's also, I'll say, a lot of people, I think when they switch technology or they switch certain things, at the end of the day, I'm always going to say this: use what's best for you and what works for you. Because at the end of the day, what works for me might not work for you, and what works for you might not work for me. But I think this conversation is like making sure people have the option to be able to use if they don't have anything to be able to use something, but if they have something that they don't necessarily like or feel that works for them, that they can actually use something else without having to hop through these hoops and hurdles and all that type of stuff. You know what I mean?
the, the insurance
But
game. Yeah.
yeah, but I mean with the pump in general, I mean, as I've been using it, it's pretty, it's pretty impressive. Like I said, I had the chance
Oh,
to use Loop with Omnipod. So at the end of the day, I'm if we're gonna say we're gonna compare something, that's what I would have to compare it to because
let's
the
let's
control.
let me ask you like this. I know you like basketball. We both like basketball. College basketball. Shout out March Madness. But if you could compare the pumps maybe to a player,
Mm.
or a couple of players around the same time, how would you compare the different pumps? You could do football, basketball, baseball, football, soccer,
I
you can
mean,
compare
it,
whatever.
and I think it's tough with that too, right? Because as we use the I know, but I'm gonna say because as we
Yeah.
use the technology, the progression of certain things changes.
Yeah.
Like at the time when I first used the Medtronic pump, you know, around that time we were just seeing like the Medtronic sensor, and that was like to me, you know what I mean? And then you saw the progression from that to Dexcom coming out with their standalone piece. And the original one of that was okay, it was decent,
Yeah.
but still
I'm
had
glad,
hiccups.
Yeah, I'm glad you brought that up because the sensor drives that conversation
Yeah.
for the most part.
Yeah.
As a former member of Tandem, like I would explain to people that we got it's not that we got lucky pairing ourselves with Dexcom. That was a strategic move that we
For
felt
sure.
like would have beneficial properties way in the future, right? So, of course, you jump on what G4, I think was the first integration with Tandem, and then now we're on the G6. The way that I explain it is, and this is one of the bigger differentiators between these two devices, and not even devices, just companies, because Medtronic has decided, make the sensors ourselves,
Yeah.
which is like, okay, that's fine. If you're going to do that, that's fine. You have to make them accurate, and you should make them that the competitive. Like,
Yeah.
why do I feel like I'm using a second tier product?
For sure.
Dexcom is the really, really, really good race car driver, and Tandem is the fastest car on the circuit.
For sure.
And
And
so
I'll and
your driver helps delegate.
yeah, for sure. And I'll say this too. The thing is, I think when we look at like the Dexcom, we can't leave Eversense out. We can't leave Libre out there. I think they have specific targets that they go to. At the end of the day, right? It's about numbers. It's about sales. It's about them getting these on the most patients possible. And that comes with having insurance issues. That comes with what works best for the patient. That comes from the kickbacks that the doctors get for pushing certain things. Because
Right.
I'll tell you, man, when I lived in Massachusetts, I was content with my pump that I had with Medtronic. And every time I went in, hey, you want to try the Tandem? You should try the Tandem. You should, but everything is good. So why, at that, like, why you want me to switch? So, but you know what I mean? So it's like we see, if you want somebody to change it, you have to give them a valid reason on why they're going to benefit from changing from something. And I look at that from, like I said, the MDI standpoint. If you're telling somebody, hey, you don't wear a CGM or you don't wear, but this can give you what you need throughout the course of the day when you're sleeping. If you drop low, it shuts off. Like all of those things, I think the way that the doctors try to sell it to the patient, they don't do a good job. And I'm telling you, some of the endos that I've talked to, they did a horrible job. And I know they're not salespeople, but you can't push something on somebody and not really understand and know what you're talking about, other than you're just trying to move a unit, because if you move the unit, you get kicked back a percentage or whatever. However it works, we know that that's the case. It's no different than a car salesman selling a
Truth.
car.
Truth. Yeah, not to call out, well, if you're listening to this and you're triggered, then yeah, we're calling you out. But for the most part, I think there are a lot of individuals who want to do their best and give the most that they can to their patients.
Yeah,
But, as we talked about last time and we've talked about before, that the time that you have with the doctor, it makes a big difference.
for sure.
And
Ooh,
so
that's
time
a that's a
that
that's a whole conversation. Oh my God, that's a whole
yeah. So
conversation.
if you have the time in the office with the doctor to listen and talk, and you get to ask your questions, and your questions get answered appropriately, not just matter of factly and then right to the point, like fine. Like if you don't think outside the box as a doctor, and you're listening to your patient and thinking about, if I was in this patient's situation, like I would be pleading with me to listen. But
Yeah,
after so long of having doctors not listen and take into account not just your knowledge of your own body, but your emotions, right? Like if you're not talking about your emotions, shout out again, we're not medical professionals, but if you're not bringing emotions and your mental health into that conversation, you're not going to get that from an endo, but they should know where you're at. They
they
should
have
know.
to.
Yeah, if you're
Yeah,
not doing well, if you're like, hey, listen, like I told my doctor, I was like, hey man, I'm depressed. I got all this stuff going on. Like this was, a couple of years ago.
yeah,
Okay, yeah, well, that tells because your numbers look like exactly as you're describing. And then he's not asking me about all these dips and dives.
yeah. And that goes. I'm glad that you brought that up, because that plays a huge role in everything. Like I think from just the general understanding of who you're dealing with as a patient, where they're at and meeting them where they're at, because we all look, man, at the end of the day, you don't have to be a rocket science to understand these graphs. You don't have, to look at a Dexcom chart or a
Yeah.
Medtronic chart or Eversense chart or, a Libre chart and look and see all of the dips, the spikes, the ups, the highs, the lows. But my concern is when if I'm looking at it myself, I'm going back trying to figure out on that day what was happening that day. And a lot of times what happens is I think when we're in that setting, it's like, oh, well, what did you eat? It might not even have anything to do with food. Like you said, it's stress.
Right.
It's the mental aspect and the emotional aspect that plays a role into this roller coaster of these highs and lows, So the graph, the numbers are only giving you one side of the story, because if you don't know exactly what was eaten, if you don't know the timing of when the insulin was taken, and I think when you're meeting with these individuals, it's like literally you're in and out. Like you're looking at numbers and then you talk about numbers and it's like, hey, do you need any scripts? And then you're out.
Yeah.
And it's just like, give me my 30, give me my 30 minutes. I want my 30 minutes. Now,
We're going to advocate for that. Speaking of minutes, we're at time here. And if you've listened thus so far, thank you. We appreciate you. We appreciate you listening. This is definitely a conversation that is going to be ongoing. The more we talk about the doctor's visits, the more we talk about the technology, who gets to use it, who has access, and really, who does it benefit?
definitely. And I think we'll double back with this conversation because I think it's a lot of stuff in the pipeline coming up with all of these companies, and even the plethora of companies that are emerging into this market too as well. You know what I mean? So I think this is going to be an open-ended conversation. We thank you all for listening to it, especially if you listen this far. And if you ever have any questions, feel free to reach out to us. And if you want to chime in on some of this stuff and, leave us some comments or, ask us some questions, please do leave it in the comments, email us if you need to, show up in our calls that we have every Sunday, 3 p.m. Pacific Standard Time, 6 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, and 11 p.m. UK time.
Bolus Maximus. All right. So I appreciate everybody listening. My name is Matt Taro. You can find us at bolusm.org. We will have some more information coming out soon. Thank you so much. You can check us on all platforms. Like, share, subscribe.
Hey,
I don't know where the keep it 100 button is. Can you hit me?
Don't worry about it. Let me do my job, man. Hey, thanks for joining and keep it 100.
Peace.
Peace.